Afternoon. Welcome to another Sunday edition of On the Front Lines with Christie Hutcherson. Today's guest is none other than retired Sergeant Boone Cutler. He is the co-author with General Flynn. And if you caught my episode last Sunday with General Michael Flynn, we kind of skirted on the 5G warfare, fifth generation warfare, and about military implications on a world global scale. But Boone Cutler is the co-author of that. Boone also served in Iraq in the Army as a psychological operations officer, which he's going to kind of touch in a little bit and tell you a little bit about his background, why he decided to co-author a book with General Flynn on fifth generation warfare and why it's relevant. Why should you, the American people, care? And quite frankly, on a world scale audience, why do you care whether we are going into what is called fifth generation warfare? And by the way, it's very different from kinetic. Kinetic warfare is boots on the ground, military weapons, things like that, soldiers. Fifth generation warfare is a little bit different. And again, we're going to delve into that. But first, I want to thank a couple of my sponsors. I'm asked all the time, Christie, how can I make a difference? What can I do? I'm disabled. I'm in my home. There's not much I can do on the battlefield. Well, that's not true. The battlefield is everywhere you are. It starts with your wallet. Quite frankly, we need to stop funding the corporations who are woke and are funding the demise of our constitutional republic. I'm going to name a couple of those incredible companies that I have personally vetted. I use their products. I put my money where my mouth is. I wouldn't have you use a product that I don't personally use myself and have been for a long time. Patriot Mobile. I cannot speak enough good things about this company. You heard General Flynn actually last week just go on and on. It was so funny because I contacted Patriot Mobile and I said, oh my God, look at this. This is an incredible endorsement for not only the work that Women Fighting for America does, but Patriot Mobile. So this is where truly the Patriots make their phone calls. PatriotMobile.com. You have to use our promo codes with all of this. It's WFFA. You will get free activation. Each company does something a little special for those who are supporting Women Fighting for America to be in the field. So Patriot Mobile, promo code WFFA. Another sponsor who I absolutely love, Patriot Switch. Patriot Switch. Please, please, please. Johnson & Johnson, Procter & Gamble, these are very evil companies. When I tell you they're evil just like Monsanto and all of them. If you want to buy products that aren't going to poison you and kill you and have all of these chemicals and stuff that cause cancer and agents that when you put them on your counters and you're wiping your counters down, you're actually putting that residue and then you're ingesting it. And then you wonder why cancer rates are out of control. It's because they're poisoning us. So if you want to go to a company that does not manufacture in China, manufactures here, is clean products that I personally use in my own house right now, you need to do Patriot Switch. Patriot Switch, buy American-made products. JoinTheFightNow.com. That's where you need to go. JoinTheFightNow.com. Please do that. And Bridie on TV, of course. If without Bridie on TV having me on here, you wouldn't hear truth. You wouldn't have these great informative speakers. Please go to the Brighteon store, brighteon.com, promo code WFFA, Brighteon store. It helps to fund programming like On the Front Lines with Christie Hutcherson. I'll talk about a couple other ones that I use, MyPillow, mypillow.com, another great sponsor. Thank you so much. Mike Lindell probably is one of the most incredible men that I've ever met, putting all of his money and his resources to fighting for truth and getting to the bottom of truth. So please, mypillow.com, WFFA. When you go to these companies, not only you're supporting programs like On the Front Lines, you're supporting us, Operation Archangel, so we can be in the field combating and eradicating human trafficking and child trafficking, which I'll get into later, but this is so important. Operation Archangel, literally, it's our boots on the ground, full on, going in and eradicating these evil doers. And that's what it is. We'll have a program about that. Actually, Thursday night, we're going to replay the program because we're going to be live this Thursday and you won't know about it until after the fact. but we're going to be doing a program and we're going to talk about human trafficking. GiveSendGo.com/WFA border Operation Archangel. You will be funding the troops that we need to be on the ground to go in and do the hard work that needs to eradicate this disease called human trafficking. So my guest, Boone Cutler, I'm so excited. It's going to be fun. It's going to be a fun 50 minutes. Hold on to your hats. Buckle up for a roller coaster ride. Bring on Boone. Hey, Boone, how are you doing today?
Good, Christy. How are you doing? Thanks for having me on your show. This is very exciting. General Flynn couldn't speak highly enough of you. And he said, hey, you got to go on Christie's show. You got to talk about fifth generation warfare. You got to talk about the upcoming book, How to Fight Artificial Intelligence. And you're happy to have us, and we're happy to be here.
Yeah. So Boone, let's just get into this. First and foremost, can you give just a little snippet of your background, what you used to do, and what qualifies you to collaborate on such an incredible book? And it's going to be a series of fifth generation warfare information for the layman out there to understand what's really going on in this country, and quite frankly, from a globalist elite perspective.
Yeah, that's a good place to start, because it's such an interesting story, and it was one of those organic things. It wasn't something that we're just sitting around a boardroom and trying to figure out how we're going to strategize on something. It was simple as General Flynn and I were standing in a hallway one day, and I was traveling the country doing specifically stuff around veterans issues. I've been a veteran advocate since 2010. I've done a lot of work in that space. And General Flynn has been doing what he's been doing. And we've had two different target audiences, completely different target audiences. As he's traveling around doing a lot more politically focused stuff, I'm focused on veteran stuff. And then he says to me one day, he says, you know, every time I get done speaking, I've got people coming up to me asking me what is going on in the country. I don't understand these things. I'm confused. It seems like there's just so much dissension everywhere. And he says, and I think it's pretty simple. And so I explain it to them, and they walk away and they feel like, oh, that's interesting. I said, well, it's crazy, because I'm getting the same thing, and it's a totally different target audience. And it doesn't matter if it's some corn-fed white boy in Alabama who feels that way, or if it's a gay black female in Chicago feeling that way, that's a conservative or a liberal or Democrat. The Republicans and Democrats, liberals and conservatives, are feeling the same way, and they really don't know what to call it. And so I've been explaining it. He's been explaining it. Before we knew it, we literally just kind of fell in on this topic, fifth generation warfare. They don't understand, or people don't understand, what fifth generation warfare is and how it affects literally everybody in this sphere, in this space, because it's in the cognitive battle space. It's not in the, like you said, it's not little green guys running around up a hill and trying to plant a flag, and like you would see on the television and the movies. But primarily, a lot of it is psychological operations. It is the battle for the battle space inside of a country that starts with the cognitive battle space and works from the political side down and works from the populist side up. And ultimately, that creates change within a society. And so we put out the first of the session, the first in the series, which is Introduction to Fifth Generation Warfare. And the main center of gravity that's being used in all these operations by foreign countries, by NGOs, by non-state actors, is artificial intelligence. And so we had to create a book to explain to people how to neutralize these centers of gravity that are used within fifth generation warfare. And the number one center of gravity used by the CCP, which is our main adversary, is artificial intelligence, and all the way that it does psychological programming. People don't understand, when you're looking at a screen, there's a good chance there's an AI behind that program that has targeted you. And in that targeting process, you are being manipulated based upon susceptibilities, vulnerabilities, psychographics, not demographics. And it gets very, very, very deep. And we're exposing our children to these things. I mean, they're being indoctrinated in the schools. They're being indoctrinated in the colleges. They're being indoctrinated through the corporatocracy of America. And they're being indoctrinated every time you hand them a tablet, because you're just trying to keep them busy. When you need to keep their ass outside with the soccer ball.
Really interesting right there. So I want to really hone in on that, because I think, you know, I think people have dabbled in this. You know, I'm a mom of young adult males, and, you know, they've been blessed because the background that their father and I have, it's all in the military realm and the DoD space on very high levels. And so they're used to this. So they knew what to look for. They know that there's psychological warfare and profiling. And I think that that's really key. there's a psychological profile that goes on. And this has been going on with these big social media conglomerates. And it's not a mistake that the FBI and the CIA and the DOJ and the White House, this corrupt White House, has been working hand in hand with these major, not only media conglomerates, but social media conglomerates, because they're collecting data. How do they do that? Because we talk about this all the time. Even when your cell phone is not on, it's always on and it's always listening, and it's profiling you. It's not a mistake. Like if you've ever sat there with a friend talking about, oh, I think I want to go buy a car or a piece of jewelry. And then all of a sudden you have all of these advertisements on your social media talking about and showing you pictures of that. That is what that's just one small little snippet that most people can kind of layman can get their mind around. But this idea of psychological operations isn't anything new. This was birthed out of right after the Second World War with the CIA creation and how they've honed that psychological operations. We've actually used this type of tactics, not in the social media realm because we didn't have that technology, but to actually topple and take over governments. So let's kind of talk about that.
Yeah, what you're talking about is natural language processing, and that is a thing. Your phone is listening to you, and it can pick up your natural language, right, just like you and I are talking, and decide what that means, and then it goes through an algorithm to determine, okay, how do you satisfy that need? And retailers do that, or merchandisers, companies do that, businesses do that. But you got to be crazy to think that it's only businesses doing it for profit. It's also countries doing it. It's your own country. It's other countries. And so when you're talking about a certain thing around people, it's picking up, it's listening to certain keywords. It's listening for certain sentiment. There's sentiment analysis. It's listening for emotion around certain topics. And this all goes into a matrix, and these go into data sets. And the largest aggregator of these data sets in the world is the CCP, is China. And so it doesn't matter if it's in the United States, Canada, Australia, UK, it doesn't matter. They're doing the same thing to everybody. And this is how they get control of things. They aggregate everybody's data into these data sets, and these data sets train AI to be able to control situations. It is the equivalent of having a dictator in your pocket. Wow, that could sound kind of weird, but it's the equivalent of having some authoritarian entity constantly around you, looking at every single thing you do and how you do it, and learning from it on how to manipulate you. We're teaching these things how to manipulate ourselves, and because everything is weaponized until something better can be weaponized, it's obviously going to be weaponized.
Yeah, you're 100% correct on that. And, people do not understand, or they underestimate, honestly, quite frankly, the threat of China. I believe with all of the intel and information that I've been able to gather, especially over the last couple of years, with China specifically, not only from a kinetic perspective, but also from a 5G perspective of how they're going to infiltrate, not only infiltrating into the United States of America, but formulating their battle plan, so to speak. And China is right now the number one, I believe, threat facing the United States of America, and actually on a global scale. And China has been stealing corporations and defense stuff for years and decades. And we've allowed this to happen. And parents have allowed TikTok in their homes with their children. And this is very concerning. I believe that TikTok honestly should have been completely banned from the United States of America, should not be allowed in anywhere in our country. What do you say to that?
I say it's another element of influencing the influencers that influence you. Okay, the way that TikTok and all these social media programs work is it's being run by the CCP, or it's being run by big tech, and they have a plan for that to be able to push and force an agenda. And it's the same way Hollywood. Hollywood, for a long time, you couldn't get a job in Hollywood. You couldn't work in Hollywood unless you had a certain ideology, you were susceptible to a certain ideology, and then they prop you up. They give you the audience because they knew you were susceptible to pushing their messaging. Well, it's the same thing now in the CCP. The CCP specifically with TikTok, and by the way, the TikTok and the CCP is not the same as it is in the United States. In China, it's totally different. There, they focus on education, on wellness, on all the positive things you can build up a country. Meanwhile, the rest of the world they're focusing on things that will tear down a country. And so they identify someone, A, that's good looking, B, that they have a talent people will watch, and C, they are susceptible to that Marxist ideology. So when they push things in their feed, they turn it around and make that message their own to their audience. This is how you co-op audiences. PSYOP 101, it's key communicators. It's propping up key communicators, co-oping them, get them to push your message so it doesn't come from you, it comes from them. Meanwhile, the whole thing is contrived, and especially on TikTok, what do? They allow people to monetize what they're doing. So they think they're the next Pavarotti, they're the next hottest thing, and their ego gets involved. They start protecting the platform, and they think they're a genius. Meanwhile, they're just pushing people to these influencers so they'll be able to receive a message. They're allowing it to be monetized so they protect it. And the number one thing you're going to see on all these platforms when people start talking about shutting them down is, you're affecting freedom of speech. You're affecting freedom of speech. You can't control freedom of speech. You know what? Freedom of speech is for Americans in America. It has nothing to do with someone in China or Pakistan who wants to launch an AI in the United States. We're not protecting Pakistanis' freedom of speech. We're protecting America's freedom of speech. But people don't know what's behind the platform. They don't know what's behind these techniques. And so they scream freedom of speech when they really don't understand that you're all being duped.
Yeah, this is a show for another day, but I just had, I was being interviewed actually, and I was talking about that. They were talking about illegals' rights. And there's a lot of things that go behind that. And I'm like, there is no rights to illegals. There's no rights to other countries who are breaking into another country, and they are not protected underneath the Constitution of the United States of America. And so, but again, that's the dumbing down. That's another topic for another day, to not understand our Constitution, our republic of what and how that document's created and how it protects legal American citizens. I'm going to ask you a couple questions. I really want to delve into this. Um,
Gen Xers, well, it's the same thing. You have generations of war. And so when we explain these things, people can argue over where did the first generation start and end, and third and fourth start and end. They overlap. They constantly overlap. And when we talk about psychological operations has existed from the beginning. If you look back at the movie Braveheart, and you got that key character who paints himself blue to look all crazy, okay, that's part of a psychological operation. He's trying to psych out the enemy. So these things have gone on and on and on. The key part to remember now in the fifth generation war is that psychological operations is not an ancillary supporting activity. It's the primary strategy. And so everybody, once they kind of understand that it's the primary strategy within your country that operates behind a veil with an invisible hand, now they start to get it. Now they start to understand why they feel confused, why they feel like everybody around them is their enemy and they can't speak, they can't talk, they got to hush themselves. All this is part of psychological programming, which is a little bit different than psychological operations, which is happening through the AI sphere. It's true psychological programming. PSYOP is about changing your perspective on things. It's about reframing. But psychological around us, and when we explain these things, they go, oh, now I get it, because it's not just countries that are doing it. You've got non-state actors that are doing it. You've got NGOs, and there's good NGOs and there's bad NGOs, but they all have some sort of game they're playing. They're doing it too. So really, right now, we're in a free for all. I mean, look around you. The American